outside pre-trip inspection. Going to be starting on my Form B outside pre-trip inspection. Starting with my door, making sure it opens and closes properly. I'm going to be checking my door hinges, making sure it's tight, secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, crack, broken, or illegally welded. I'm also going to be checking the weather seal, making sure it's not worn, torn, or missing to prevent any air or water from coming into the cab. We're going on to my door latch, making sure it's tight, secure with the full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, crack, broken, or illegally welded, and well lubricated. Going on to my mirrors, making sure my mirror brackets are tight, secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, crack, broken, or illegally welded. Going on to the mirrors themselves, making sure they're nice and clean at all times, not cracked or broken, free of any illegal stickers, and adjusted to myself. Going on to my steps. Here I have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and my catwalk. Making sure it's tight, secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, crack, broken, or illegally welded. And making sure they're free of any water or grease to prevent any self-injuries. Here I have my DPF system, making sure the reservoir is tight and secure with this full set of nuts and bolts, not cracked or broken, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. I'm making sure the cap is on, tight and secure, not cracked, broken, or missing, and I'll be checking its proper fluid level through the gauge inside the cab. Going on to my fuel tank. Making sure my fuel tank is not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. The fuel straps which are holding my fuel tank are tight and secure with the proper set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. The friction gaskets are not ripped, torn, or missing to prevent any metal-to-metal rubbing. Going on to my fuel cap, making sure it's tight and secure, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and with its proper T-chain inside. I'm also making sure my rubber gasket inside is not worn, torn, or missing to prevent any leaks. Going on to my fuel crossover line. Making sure it's tight and secure at each end, free of any cuts, cracks, or bulges, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. On the inside, I have my drive shaft, making sure it's nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, with its proper U-joints at each end. The U-joints are tight and secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and well lubricated. The U-joints in the front take you to my transmission. Transmission is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. The U-joints in the back take you to my differential. My differential is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks on the ground. On top I have my torque arm, making sure it's nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. My torque arm is used as a weight stabilizer. Here I have my cross member. Cross member is nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. I'm going to be checking the frame of my truck, looking all the way down, all the way up, making sure it's nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Going on to my suspension. Here I have my spring mount, making sure my spring mount is tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Here I have my leaf springs, making sure I have a full set of leaf springs. They're not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. Going down, I have my mounting pads, making sure my mounting pads are in the proper position, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. The U-bolts going around my mounting pad are tight and secure with the proper set of nuts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Here I have my shock absorber, making sure my shock absorber is nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be checking for any leaks. If my shock absorber were to be leaking, it will need to be replaced before I continue my trip. I'm also making sure it's tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. Behind my shock absorber, I have my airbag, making sure my airbag is free of any cuts, cracks, or bulges, fully inflated, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. My airbag is supported with its air mounts. I'm making sure the air mounts are tight and secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Going back inside, I have my brake chamber. This truck is equipped with disc brakes, so they are self-adjusting, so I do not have a push rod or a slack adjuster. I'll be checking my brake chamber, making sure it's tight and secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. it's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. The clamps going around my brake chamber are tied secure with the proper set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. I'll also be checking the air lines leading to my brake chamber, making sure they're tied secure at each end, if we have any cuts, cracks, or bulges, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. Going on to my brake system. How I have disc brakes, I have my rotor, caliper, and my brake pads. I'm making sure my rotor and caliper are tied secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. I'm also making sure my brake pads have no less than a 1/4 inch of life left. I'll also be checking for any type of fluid leaks. If I were to see any fluids leaky, that would indicate my inner axle seal has busted and needs to be replaced. I'll also be checking for any white powder or black powder. White powder will indicate that the brakes overheated and the fire extinguisher was used. Black powder will indicate that there's metal to metal rubbing. Going on to my drives. Here I have a dual set of tires. I'll be checking the inside and outside walls of my tires, making sure they're free of any cuts, cracks, or bulges. And I'll be checking my thread for any nails or screws that could cause a flat. Here in the back, recaps are permitted. My thread life should be no less than 232. Going on to my drives, I have a dual set of tires. I'll be checking the inside and outer walls of my tires, making sure they're free of any cuts, cracks, or bulges. I'll also be checking my thread for any nails or screws that could cause a flat. Here in the back, recaps are permitted. My thread life should be no less than 2/32 of an inch. Air pressure should be between 85 to 100 psi, unless specified differently by the manufacturer. I'll also be checking my bud spacing, making sure it's free of any rocks, wood, etc. Anything that could come flying out and become a hazard as I'm driving, or anything that could cause me a flat. Going on to my rim. Making sure my rim is not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Tied secure with its full set of lug nuts. I'm making sure I have a full set. I'll be checking for any rust or metal shavings around my lug nuts. If I have any rust or metal shavings, that would indicate that they are loose and need to be tightened or replaced. Going on to my hub. Making sure it's tied secure with its full set of nuts and bolts. It's not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. And I'll be checking for any leaks. Here I have my valve stem. This is where I'll be checking my air pressure with my personal air gauge. Valve stem is free of any contact with the rim. It's nice and straight, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded, and I'll be listening for any air leaks. Same inspection I did on my second axle, I would do on my third axle with no exceptions. Going on to the back, I have my mud flaps. Making sure my mud flap frame is tied secure with the full set of nuts and bolts, not dent, cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Making sure my mud flap itself is tied secure with its full set of nuts and bolts, not ripped or torn, not too short, not too long. Too long could get torn on my tires and get torn off. Too short would defeat the purpose. Proper height is 6 inches from the ground. I'm also making sure I have my DOT reflector tape. Going on to my brake lights, making sure my lenses are nice and clean. They should be red in color, and I'll be checking for any burnt out bulbs. The lenses are not cracked, broken, or missing. My reverse light, making sure my lens is nice and clean, it's not cracked or broken, and I'll be checking for any burnt out bulbs.